Alright, let's hope this is the charm. Yeah, I know we've been having some technical issues, but we're back. Thank you again, all of you, for the patience. Thank you for being here, and thank you for joining to this amazing course of animal illustration. We're gonna keep working on our pencil illustrations, and I want to show you a bit about of how to better elaborate your illustrations. And I know that not all of you are doing the same illustration of me as me. I'm doing a lizard, and then that can have a bit of different texture than a lot of animals. I don't know. I think mostly when people go to draw an animal, they probably pick a mammal, or yeah, that's what I think. So we're gonna be seeing some fur today. And yeah, as I told you, I had the example of the cat, of this cat, and we're gonna look into it. Yeah, maybe we can make it a bit smaller. Oh, okay, you cannot see the cat. Give me a second. Yes, there you go. We have the cat on the screen. And then I'm gonna show you my paper as well. So I can show you how to elaborate when the texture of your animal is like this. Okay, when you have a texture like this, I think your first thing you want to do, your first instinct here would be to draw the hair, as in, let me just zoom in a bit. I think if I would approach this without really looking at it a lot, I would say like, okay, the way I need to do this is just draw the hair. So then I would do something like this. But then soon you're gonna realize that when you're drawing the hair, that's also very, very dark, and then you can maybe fall in this mistake that if you want fur, then you have to do this, right? So one thing that we have to think of, like first thing we have to think of, is that when we're drawing fur, we're not doing necessarily all the hairs, but we're doing is the shadows that these hairs are gonna be showing in the illustration. So you can see in this one that we have a lot of, maybe it's a light color hair, like a white even, maybe a beige. And if I'm gonna draw those like this, then, well, we're not really gonna be able to see what we wanna see. So my advice here is for you to draw mainly around the fur. So first thing is that instead of, if the fur is going in this direction, then we're gonna go the opposite direction. Because what we're doing is trying to draw the shading that the fur is leaving. So if I have one like this, like you can see it here. If I have one hair like here, then this is gonna be creating some shading. So it's better when we go from the other side in. And then you're gonna be able to see these hairs way more. So I'm just going around it, like if I'm thinking that these hairs go like this, I'm just trying to fill in the empty spaces. So then you can better have something like this instead of something like this. Let's use our reference. Like let's use one of the ears. I think that could be a good one. I'm just gonna make it a bit bigger so you can really see it and do this exercise with me. Yeah. So we're gonna be focusing on this part. So again, and this is thinking that you already have the shading, right? So then I would tell you like, okay, then I think I would have a shading like in this part, in this part, in this part, right? Which I can do very fast. Okay, in here I just don't want to overdo it because okay, maybe we're gonna work on it on top. We can start with these little tiny ones that we have. Okay, I'm just making this bigger and bigger so you can see it. And then we can start with the ones here. Okay, sorry, I think this is too dark of a pencil. Let me just go for another one. Alright. So we understand that the fur going here, we really have to think about the direction of the fur. Like the direction where the fur is growing. In here is going up, and on this is going to the sides. So we're gonna start here, and we are gonna do the opposite one. Just trying to work around it. That you're still gonna see the fur. But mainly what you're doing is the shadow of the fur. You want to leave those white spaces for the fur itself. So do you see how we already have a sense of these white hairs that we have on top? Then let's work on the others. Sorry. Yes, this one is the one I want you to see. Okay, let me see if I can do this a bit brighter. Okay, not so bright. Yeah, I think that's perfect. And then we keep going with the so yeah, I did a very fast sketch, but then fastly I can realize that the edge of this ear is way lighter than the rest. So we can just draw that and keep like on the edge of it. Hers seem a little darker, even though this is also a little darker on top. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. As in, yeah, you see this picture that we have here, and maybe you want to recreate all the same patterns of the fur, how they're going. That's going to be very complicated because then you're going to copy the photography. That's not what we want. Like I've told you before, we just want to use this as a reference. And then how can we use this reference on our favor? Is to try to understand what patterns can we use and can we replicate. So in this case, what we can replicate is the direction of the fur. So we know that all this is going up, no? So the one here is going here, the one here is going to the right. So let's go with it. So when you're drawing the fur, you're gonna realize that what you're doing is mainly just drawing negative spaces. What do I mean by that? So instead of you drawing the fur, you're drawing where the fur is not, and that'll be that negative space. This exercise can come really difficult when you're doing maybe like a black mammal. If you're doing maybe like a black bear, or maybe you're doing a black cat, then this is gonna be a bit more complicated because the details are not always gonna be super visible due to the coloration of the animal, correct? So then you have to focus mainly on where the light is hitting your animal, and when you're gonna do your details, you have to be aware that lighting has to be hitting there. Yeah, maybe I look at this and I think it could be darker than I expected, but when you put it all together, maybe it makes more sense. And we can also just erase it a bit, just to want you to understand that drawing white animals and drawing black animals is something that's gonna be super complicated. But you can do the same exercise with this image like the ones that we have done previously, like the ones that we just do the image in black and white. That's also gonna help you a lot to understand what's happening. Okay, right now I'm looking at this line and I feel that that line is in the drawing, like in the sketch. It helps me place things, you know. It helps me say, okay, that's the edge of the ear. But when I'm drawing it here, not really necessary, no. Because we don't want to divide it too much. The hair is also coming from there, so if we draw a line there, it's just gonna be confusing for the eyes, and maybe we're not gonna understand that those are fur, like our hair, or yeah. When fur comes together, it creates like these little triangles in. If you work on those, you can also give more idea of what's happening. But as all the processes we're doing, they're basically observation processes. Okay, let's continue with another one. This is just a fast explanation on how to do your textures, and then I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna be doing my texture. So whenever I'm doing this exercise, I just think that sometimes we don't even look at these textures like in deep. Mm, and what I mean by that is maybe you've never seen a zoom in picture of the ear of a cat. Okay, well, maybe a cat is easier to see because a lot of us have pets, but maybe other animals you never really think of. Let's zoom in, take a picture, zoom it in, and really understand how the texture of this animal goes. So we're gonna continue with this one. We're gonna change our camera a bit. Yeah, that's good. And we are gonna go with this one. So yeah, this is just a goldfish. And for me it was very fascinating because when you really zoom in on this animal, you already know that your animal has scales, no? But then you see more. Like if you look at the coloration of this animal, you can see that the coloration is being created by these little dots. Maybe I was not super respecting that. But yeah, if you're drawing a fish, I can show you how we could elaborate on this type of texture. Last class that we were looking at this illustration that they sent us as a homework, I was telling you about this type of scales. That whenever you're drawing something that has scales, you're gonna go with this type. And it's kind of like a C shape, like an inverted C shape. So like this. Okay, and here is also where I tell you that you don't have to draw it exactly as you see it in the picture, but you just have to understand the pattern. And if I try to understand the pattern, I see that the scales start kinda on this side of each scale, and they go like this, and then on here, then they go together. Okay, wait. Okay, not really, no. Sorry, there are some animals that do that. Apparently not this one. So like this. So from here I'm gonna have one like that. Okay, yeah, no, what happens is that these two are gonna come together like, okay, let's try this again. Okay, it's like this. So then each scale has two scales that start there. So I could have like more here, and here, and here, and then same here, and here, and here, 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 here. Those are the patterns that we want to understand. And this is just for the sake of our explanation. So when we look at them, maybe you cannot see the contour of all of them that well. So yeah, we have ones that are gonna be touching the light, and it looks like this part is just giving a little shading. And let's say if it goes like this. Could say that my lighting goes like that. In here also it can help to understand the pattern. If we talk a bit about lighting, like I think on the ones up top we have a really strong line in the middle, and then we want to look to the ones here. Maybe we see shading more to the edge. Something like that, like if you, like the light is only touching this edge, and then we have our dark part here. And that's how you can continue just replicating this pattern. And just taking it all around the individual. Sorry, I might be touching the camera, that's why it's going a bit shaky. Okay. Alright. Right, so what do we have here? We have some scales on top that are catching the light very strongly. They have a complete line in the middle. And then we have some scales that are kinda in our mid-tone, and the scales down there in our shadow side. But that's a way that you can start creating those textures. In here, so this is what I was telling you that I found very interesting. This fish has a coloration that is the orange, and apparently coloration goes on tiny dots. Then you can do that as well. You see? And that's how you can do little by little these textures that are gonna give your animal a sense of realism. Doesn't necessarily has to be exactly the same thing you're seeing on the picture. And this is pretty much where your creativity jumps in, because you're gonna be the one who is in the power of deciding what works and what's not working for your image. You also have to remember that these very elaborated patterns we don't have to do in the whole illustration. We have parts of the illustration that are going to be very caught in the light, that they don't need as much detail, and some others that are going to be very caught in the shadow, that are also not going to be needing all the details of this texture. And I have one last for you. Um, that is just pretty much drawing the skin. And on this part, when we start to understand our pattern, then it's going to be easier to elaborate. Okay, I do see a lot of proportion issues, maybe. Let me check if that's actually a proportion issue. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the way that I'm seeing it. Yeah, and when you're doing it this fast, of course you're not gonna be able to catch up the details. I'm just trying to give you an example of what you could do and the things that you can look at while you're doing this illustration. And when you're working maybe with a texture like this, maybe if you have a hippo that you can really clearly see the skin, if you understand the pattern of the skin and if you understand how the light is hitting it, then it's gonna be way easier for you to elaborate. Do you see all these details here? That's what we want. That is what we want, and maybe it looks very messy right now, but it's just because this is my first approach to this animal. But you see that little by little we go putting this up together. And this is kind of what we're looking for when we're trying to do our illustration, just finding the patterns in these and just elaborating them. So yeah, I'm gonna jump back up to my illustration because I wanna, yes, I'm gonna take this off. Oh, and then we go to this one. We're gonna work on the details of this one. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is what I've been telling you that you should do, and is finding the pattern and just going with it. So we're gonna have something like this at first, and then we're gonna move to the rest of the body. So yeah, when we're talking about details, we're talking about contrast, and if we start from the beginning, if we start increasing them, then our illustration is gonna have from the beginning this sense, the sense of realism, the sense of detail that we're looking for. So I'm just gonna go with my eye. I think coloring the eye is something very satisfactory. Yeah, maybe I don't have dark enough for the eye. Yes, I could just leave it like that and it's beautiful. Okay, I'm kidding. But I do feel that once you place the eye, and everything just comes to like to way more realistic. And then we want to try to understand all these lines around it. So yeah, remember when I was telling you like, yeah, it's not time for that. Don't think of the details yet. Don't elaborate that just now. Guess what? Now is the time. Now is the time to be picky with our details, and now is the time to go for it. Just to really elaborate that. And is allowed to keep finding things in your illustration that you want to change. So don't worry if you're having that. So I'm just doing kind of like a mapping or where those lines go. Then we can elaborate on them. For me, it's just nice to see how the structures just kind of fall into place. And then what you did for so long start making more and more sense. Yeah, just look how this is already looking. I am very impressed. And I told you before that this is not the type of animal that I usually illustrate. But I'm just enjoying it so much. Such a beautiful animal. And then we have when we have like this mapping or of the things that we want to have, we can work harder on our contrast. And in here you can see that the texture surrounding the eye is very, very detailed. I'm just trying to understand that's kind of lumpy texture. Not having to replicate it all, but just going with it. Same in these parts, but I cannot see in full detail what's happening. And on this other side, we have to kind of reconstruct with the things that we have here. And I just feel that we always have kind of like this structure that goes kind of like this. Okay. Now I need to have the one down. And then we can just really think of the shading we had as a base and work from there. Okay, just need a darker pencil. Yes, I have a 2B. It's the darkest I work usually. But yeah, this for sure is gonna help us with details like is those parts of our drawing that are very dark. And that you know they help them. If that contrast, you immediately understand what's happening. And just other lines that when these lines are place like very in the shadow or very in the light. We need the contrast to understand what's happening. There is something about perspective and lighting that works very interesting when you want to depict something that is further away. So whenever you have something that is closer to you, the dark parts are going to be darker and the light parts are going to be lighter. That's why these things, these black details help us bring this forward. And then on the back, right now I'm realizing that we have maybe too light of parts here that we can darken, and that's gonna help us understand that that goes in the back. Sorry. And then we can work on those transitions. And we still make clear the difference between the lighting and the shadow in the back. It's just not make the dark that dark and the light that bright. We also should not forget that even when we have the lightest parts here, doesn't mean that they're completely white. We can still darken them a little bit. You see, we only did like 30 minutes of working, and then you already kind of see it way more detail, with more texture, with more shadow. I think the eye can go darker. What do you think? Should we try that? I think going dark always goes hard for me. Because I'm afraid that I'm gonna ruin the illustration, then I cannot erase it. But if I keep it light, then that's not gonna be an issue, no? So let me just show you from a distance what we have. So yeah, this is how it's looking after working on it for maybe half an hour. Then we can have this sense of realism with very basic work on it. This is why it's so important, all the work that we did before, all the layers that we did regarding the shadow and the light, and all the studies that we did to see how the light was impacting our species. Because then it's gonna be very fast that we're gonna get to elaborate stage, and that's what we want. Then in this point is where you're gonna realize, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, this was the one I wanted you to see. Maybe a bit like this also. But yeah, just I want you to see the difference between the one we have here and the one we have here. And we just work on this for about like half an hour, 20 minutes. So not a lot. We're just focusing really on increasing the contrast. We're focusing on depicting those details and understanding how the light is gonna be affecting those different textures. And that's it. It was not a lot. It was not super hard work. And now you see that the illustration it has come way more to life. And it's interesting to see it like this because then we understand that we're really close to finishing everything. No? Like if it only took me half an hour, maybe it's gonna take me like 2 hours or 3 hours to finish the process. And that's gonna be the interesting thing about it. So I'm gonna keep elaborating, but we're gonna jump to the body because I understand that the body has a different pattern and maybe it can be a bit complicated. But you're gonna see how it's gonna be still super easy to go from here, like here, to an elaborated state like the face. So I'm just gonna, maybe I'm gonna use this one. Hmm. Okay, now I was thinking of using this one because you can see the texture of the body, and I think that's interesting. But Yeah. Uh, okay, let's say we have more options. If we do, then we can use another one because I like the zoom in that we have on this one, you know? Okay, this could also be an option, but okay, let's look at the other ones. All right, let's look at these ones. I think that this one could help us a lot on what we're aiming for. So maybe let's just make it a bit bigger. Yes, maybe something like this. And then let's go back to the body of this beautiful lizard. And then we go from there. Okay. I feel we have kind of like lumps, but they're pretty organized. It's just not like random lumps. But let me see. Yeah, do you see? We have the lines very clearly here. Oof, okay, I'm gonna use this one. I think I like this one. It can help me understand this as well. So yeah, when you're looking at mammals, you can very clearly see like the way their hair is growing, and in here we can also see like how the scales are organized, and we can follow that. Mm. Okay, I'm gonna stop moving the camera. There you go. Okay, and this doesn't mean that it's necessarily gonna look like this in the end. Like it's just guides. So here is where I tell you, like, okay, maybe we can think about a bit more of what's happening in the shadow, or like in our mid-tones mainly, to what's happening in the light. And I feel that in a way they look alike a bit to the scales of the fish that we were drawing earlier. Yeah, I'm just kind of doing like half circles to do this. Okay, even though I think this is a great reference, I think maybe a reference like this one could also understand, help us understand better how it's working. Why? Because you see the light in hitting it, so then you see the scales projecting the shadow. So what I feel is that these scales are catching the light in a way here, and then on the right side, then there's a bit of shading. And just as long as you're consistent with this, is gonna work. Okay, we also have to find a way to make this more steady. This what I also tell you about the details. You can also see it here on the face. Just on the down part of it, I didn't took the time to do everything exactly on how the scales were going. Because it's alright, like sometimes it's just alright to not depict all the details in every part of the body. Like if you look up a reference right here, the one that we have here on the right, and if we're gonna look to the leg, not this one immediately, but the next one, you see that it's really catching the light, and then all those details are not that visible. Yeah, I see them. But if you were to step back, or maybe even in the phone, you cannot really see them. Let me see if we have another example. Yeah, like this. We have this animal with a certain distance, and then on the details of the face, I can already not see all the details of the things that are happening, and that is alright. Like, yeah, maybe we want to play with our texture a bit, but we don't have to make it super visible, super clear everywhere. Okay? Okay. Alright. We're gonna be back for a bit. Yeah, so this is mainly what I want to tell you with this exercise and this part of elaborating. Sometimes not because you're doing more, it means that it's gonna look better. So just okay. Sorry about that. Yes, I just wanna in a way I just wanna show you. I just want to show you that at this part of the process you don't have to work on the details in all the body. Then maybe that's gonna give us a texture that is gonna be too much. Like you're gonna over texturize it. We also don't want that. As I said, I think I said in the of this course that a lot of times I would just rather a drawing that has very clearly where the light and the shadow are coming from than when we are having all the details and having exactly every feather, having exactly every wrinkle, having every hair on place. Because your brain is not always going to be able to read those details if you don't have the big shape there. So that's why it's so important, and that's why at this moment it's so important to have the exercises that we did on previous classes of the shadow and the line just to get the volume of the figure. And right now, as you saw with the exercise that I was showing you, just with little details, just with tiny things, then we're creating this this image, we're creating this sensation of reality. That's what we're aiming for. So yeah, don't overthink this too much. Just go to the paper, try to your best. Send me the pictures of the activity that you did today. I would love to see your homework. And yeah, on Saturday I'm just gonna be commenting some of them. Okay. Mm, for me, this is like my personal homework. I'm gonna try to finish the one that I started today because I have two lizards, right? So then I'm gonna do the first lizard that I have for today, and then on the next class we're gonna be working on the second one, so I can show you how I would elaborate that one as well. I'm also gonna show a bit of elaboration of the place where they're sitting. I think is a rock or a tree trunk, or we'll figure out maybe. Yeah, we'll figure that out. So if you also have a layout that has more elements, then you can always be thinking about that, and you can approach that in the same way as we're approaching everything, just going from the general to the specific. So if you're thinking of another element that is in your layout, then you can think of it like, okay, how would the light be touching this object, or how would the shadow would be affecting this object, because we have these two animals. No, I'm talking about my layout again. I have these two animals, and then if the light is coming from a certain place, then they're gonna have a cast shadow. If you remember to the exercise that we were doing regarding the sphere and the square, they both had a cast shadow. And with this cast shadow, like, we have to think that all of our individuals are gonna have that, and that is just super powerful tool to place the individuals in space. And then you see them and you're like, okay, they're not floating anymore, because if there's a cast shadow, that means they're there, correct? So if we do all the things I told you when we were working on the cast shadow, like doing it darker on the place that the element is touching the surface, then you're gonna have always the shadow darkest place in the point where they are touching. So that's just super useful. And then just like doing the cast shadow, um, like from stronger to softer till it vanish. And yeah, that will be all for today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for your patience with all these technical issues that we were having today. Just want to let you know that we are always working on improving those. And yeah, I just really hope to see you next class and to keep working on our illustrations. I'm also really looking forward to see some of your work. So don't forget to send the homework. And yeah, we'll talk about that on Saturday. I'll see you all next